All right, so here's the last section of chapter 1. We are going to cover section 1.5, which is about bias in sampling. All right, if the results of the sample are not representative of the population, then the sample has what is called bias. There are 3 sources of bias: sampling bias, non-response bias, and response bias. Okay, these are not sampling methods. These are issues that happen with your collection of data. Okay, so let's take a look. Sampling bias means that the technique used to obtain the individuals to be in the sample tends to favor one part of the population over another. Okay, so again, this is not a sampling method, it is a problem with that sampling method. Okay, one thing that can happen is we have undercoverage. If we do not get enough of the population, our results may not be accurate. Okay, so when the proportion of one segment of the population is lower than its counterparts. So when we did that DePaul study, and on the side, I showed you how each group, when I did the number sampled divided by the total, they all came out to 0.0045. Okay, every single one of the 3 that I did came out to that same value. Okay? That is a good sample. If these first 2 had been the same, and then this one was some other value, 0.002, something smaller, okay? Undercoverage occurs when the proportion of one segment is lower than the rest, okay? If this is lower than the rest, this group is undercovered, and it is not going to give us a correct representation of the entire group. Okay, so I may have used that stratified sample, but if I do not get a correct number from each group, we can have undercoverage. Okay, now that could be because of non-response bias. So this happens when individuals who are chosen to be selected decide that they don't want to do it. Okay, so what happens is they use randomness to select the people. Okay, people don't like getting random phone calls from someone they don't know to answer a question about something. Okay, they don't. I don't answer my phone if it's a phone number I don't recognize. So there are times when people do not reply. So what do? Well, they call back, they can show up at your door, they can offer you, hey, we need you to answer this survey. We're going to send you a $10 Amazon gift card for your time. Okay, they can give you an incentive to complete the survey because they need enough to be able to get accurate information. Okay, so for an example like this, let's say my sample I needed to collect was 1,000. I send out 1,000 surveys. I'm expecting I need all 1,000 of those people to turn it back in. And let's say I get back 200. Okay, this is a non-response issue. Okay, I've hit 800 people that did not reply to me. That is a problem. Okay, so non-response means I've selected you and you do not reply back with your results. Okay, another one is called response bias. So this is what happens when answers do not actually reflect the true feeling of the respondent. Okay, there are times when the respondent may not understand something. Okay, there are times the person giving the interview or asking the questions makes an error. They say something wrong, okay? And that could sway the results of the answer, okay? Maybe that interviewer wrote something incorrect, misrepresented the answer. So you reply with an answer, but the interviewer writes it different than what you meant, okay? Wording of questions. If your questions are not worded correctly, you may sway someone to give a specific response. There's so much involved in this, guys. It's a long, long, long process. Okay, order of the question or words. Okay, do you change the order in which you ask your questions? Do you change the order of your options of your responses? Because there's some people that, you know, they're in a survey like this and they just want to get it done. So they're going to give you the quickest first answer you give me. Yep, that one right there. They're not going to always listen the whole time. So, so many different things can be involved here. The other one is it an open or closed question? Is it open-ended where they fill in the response, or is it option-based? And if you option-based it, have you really given everybody the opportunity to give their exact answer? Okay, so a few different ways in which the surveys can be bad. Another thing that can happen is data entry error, okay? It may not be any sort of response bias, but the person entering the results into the computer could mistype something. So right here, instead of typing 39, they type 93. All right, so this can happen. There is such a thing as human error, and these little things can impact the results of our survey and make them not as accurate as they're supposed to be. Okay, so that is why we are going to double check. We always look at those kinds of things. I have you use the little link to copy data over. I never have you I try to have you not hand type data into our software very frequently because it can cause an error. If you mistype a number, your results are going to be different. Okay. Non-sampling errors. So these are errors that result non-sampling errors are errors that result from sampling bias, non-response bias, response bias, or data entry. It can happen in an entire census. It happens. Okay, so the response bias, it doesn't have anything to do with how I sampled, but my answers can still be wrong. Sampling errors are an error that results from using a sample to estimate information about a population. This type of error occurs because a sample gives incomplete information about the population. So we always have to be careful when we're doing research. There's so much involved with creating your questions. Making sure they are worded correctly. Make sure you alternate your wording. Make sure you get accurate results. That's why a lot of times people will record surveys like this to make sure that they can go back and have the correct information. You have to determine how you're sampling, making sure your sampling is random. And then double checking all of this stuff. So lots and lots and lots involved in the process of collecting statistics. So when you're watching the news next time, or you come across an article that mentions statistics of something, even though you see like one sentence of, hey, 16% of Americans are left-handed. I don't know if that's the value, I'm just making it up. But it took a lot to get that data. So even a simple one sentence piece of information, there's a lot that went into that to get to that result. So hopefully you guys didn't get too bombarded with definitions here. The next chapter I find a lot more fun because we're gonna go into creating a bunch of different graphs and learning how to read graphs and interpret, is this a good graph? So hopefully, like I said, this wasn't too bad. You guys can go into Blackboard, and there are, let me see here, under the course content, you can find the chapter review. So I'm going to show you that really quick. And it just goes through, since this one is just a whole bunch of definitions. So all your terms, definitions, broken up types of data, how we measured the data, levels of measure, how we collect, types of observational studies, sampling methods, types of bias, other problems that can happen. So lots and lots and lots of different definitions we did here. So hopefully this extra little sheet here will help you as you're reviewing these concepts. As always, if you ever have any questions, feel free to email me, but I will see you again in chapter 2.